Welcome to Miami View, another great episode with my colleague Oscar Musibay. And today we are so fortunate to have a homegrown talent in Miami. Um, we have Mario Ariza, who is a journalist and an author of a very interesting book called Disposable City. And it kind of gives an account of a personal account and also very wonderful history of Miami's water issues, from water quality to flood mitigation and management to sea level rise and our future and what comes next. So, Mario, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm so thrilled that you wrote this book. One,
Thank you,
because
Irela.
one, because you're from Miami, because and we've seen a lot of these carpetbagger doom and gloom authors, journalists come to Miami and just kind of destroy us. And you know, I love the fact that you're from here. It's your perspective. You love this place, like we all do. We're all Miamians, and you know, you kind of, you know, really, you know, it's a very kind of emotional book at sometimes. I haven't finished reading it. I'll totally
It's
admit it.
okay.
I'm
It's
in the
kind of long.
process, but I'm enjoying it tremendously. Particularly, you start in China, which is quite interesting, and that was kind of like that kind of, I guess, gave you that climate change perspective, right? So talk to me about that, and then we'll get into it. We'll get into other parts.
Sure, totally. Yeah. So first off, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show, and also that like I think it was about time somebody from down here tried to put it all into words and put it together, because it seems like every time that it gets cold up north, some reporter or writer manages to convince their editor to send them down to Miami for a week to write about how Miami's going to drown. And it's like, it was like, you know, they came with the snowbirds, and some have done very good jobs, right? Like I'm not saying this is what happened with Jeff Goodell, but Jeff Goodell did a very good job with Goodbye Miami in 2015, which made this.
I mean, I would say, you know, like started a little catalyst here, I would say. You know, I give him credit for that. And, you know, okay, you know, he did well with our doom and gloom and continues to do that, but that's okay.
It's okay. However, you know, in the time that Jeff Goodell was writing his Goodbye Miami, I was actually in China. And I was in China in the middle of a life transition. I was, you know, moving away from being a full-time teacher at private schools to writing full-time. And so I figured I'd make some money by teaching English in China, and I made good money. And I spent 3 months kind of prancing about South and Central China. And I was in this city called Zhengzhou. And my Putonghua is very, very bad. Putonghua, for those who don't know, that's Mandarin Chinese. So I was in the city of Zhengzhou. Zhengzhou has 8 million people, right? If you've never heard the city of Zhengzhou, it's like they're Cincinnati, Ohio. It's in the center of China. It's a major rail station. It's the capital of Hunan province. Hunanese cuisine is delicious, but that's neither here nor there, because what happened was in the middle of June or July, while I was there teaching English, I was living in this hotel. And first of all, you had to wear an N95 mask all the time just to walk around, because the air was that bad in quality, right? And in fact, when the pandemic started, what got me through the first weeks of it was the fact that I still had one of my old N95s from China hanging around.
Look at that.
But there was a day that I'll never forget where I woke up, got dressed, got ready, left the hotel, and I stepped outside to walk to the place where I was teaching these classes, and I could not see the buildings on the other side of the street. And this is a wide street. This is like the size of Brickell Avenue. These are, you know, skyscrapers, and you just couldn't see them because of the smog. And the smog in the summer is not nearly as bad as the smog in the winter. And I was like, ay, Dios mío, you know, what is this? What are we doing to the earth? What is going on here? And I was like, wait a second, I'm moving back to Miami in 2 months. What's going to happen to Miami? And that's how the research for the book started. That's how my obsession with this topic sort of began, with a very visceral realization that, like, oh, maybe we're kind of doing stuff to the planet that's never been done to the planet by any species before.
Right. Incredible.
That's how it started.
Yeah.
So there's another part. Obviously, I'm in the beginning of the book, where you're at your grandmother's 80th birthday party
Mm-hmm.
at a beautiful skyscraper in Miami, overlooking Biscayne Bay, and you're kind of contemplating, will I be in Miami when I'm 80,
Right.
celebrating my 80th birthday? And that was, that kind of, you know, that got
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and so there's just so many issues with water, and that's my passion. That's
I
always
know.
this is my lifelong work. Um, so let's talk a little bit about water quality, and then we'll transition into sea level rise and
Mm-hmm.
resilience. But you're looking out over Biscayne Bay, and as you know, uh, it's in a state of emergency, whether people
Right.
want to admit it or not. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And the fact that I always say the environment is the economy here, because
Mm-hmm.
we rely on a beautiful bay and beach. It's our tourism economy, even though right now it's kind of like on a limbo.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, it's our treasure, and we've been polluting it
Right.
for decades.
Right. More than half a century now.
Yeah. And so you did a little research on some of the nutrient pollution, and how
Oh
how
boy.
how that the water,
Yeah, I mean, I
septic
traced the
yeah,
whole,
you did
like,
the
I
whole
I
thing.
went with a septic company to like fix some septic tanks out in like Homestead, like have that smell still in my nose. That's not,
Mm.
yeah.
Gross.
And I also like kayaked up the Miami River and talked to folks concerned with water quality here, and tried to really explain to people that this has been a long-standing issue, and now it's getting to the point where the bay is really dying.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
yes,
and it has a lot to do with our population, the
tons,
increase
tons,
in
tons.
population.
Yeah, but it's also a story of greed, and it's a story of short-sightedness and greed, because if you ask people, why is Miami's water quality awful, they'll be like, wait a minute, Miami has awful water quality, and you're like, yes, Miami has awful water quality. Why is it awful? And they're like, I don't know, right? And then the number one answer is septic systems, right? And
It's one of them.
other answers, right? It's effluent runoff from the stormwater system. You have a lot of stuff coming up
Our
from
canals and our structures.
Okeechobee. Right, exactly.
Those are what I call Lake Okeechobee the big toilet.
Right, it's a giant toilet.
It has two
Exactly.
flush points on either side of the coast. But then
Exactly.
when you look at Miami and the way we're structured,
Mm-hmm.
we have lots of little mini toilets because all of those
Mm-hmm.
canals,
And
and
if you see where the
slower,
seagrass is dying,
right. It's a
right?
slower process. So yes, there
Yes.
are some hot
Yeah.
spots,
Right.
and it's a big watershed.
It's a big watershed, and it's because of our geology, but because of our geology and our development decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our disrespect for the particular kind of ecology of this place that we were given. But yeah, I have a scene in the book where I'm hanging out with this like famous, and I mean like this guy is famous, and I was working as a stringer at the time. Famous Dutch photojournalist Kadir van, I'm not going to pronounce the Dutch. It's like Louis or something like that. He's just a really sweet guy. And he's like giving Alan Dodd like the 10th degree. He's like, Alan, are you really going to be able to fix this? Alan Dodd is the City of Miami Public Works Director, former head of the Army Corps in Jacksonville. Like the guy knows his stuff.
Right.
Love Alan.
He knows his infrastructure stuff.
He does. He knows his infrastructure stuff. So Kadir and Alan are going at it. And I'm just sitting there at Jose Marti Park, like kind of taking notes on the interview, and a smell hits me, They're waiting for high tide to show up. The high tide doesn't show up. They're like, oh, the king tides aren't showing up. We're not going to get a good footage of Miami flooding. And I'm like, Miami isn't just flooding, it's flushing, And it's one of the major issues. And it also ties into, all right, we've got 50,000 to 60,000 septic tanks right now that are failing, right, during the rainy season. And all that and the stormwater runoff is coming straight out of the canals. And it comes in pulses. It doesn't come regularly, so the seagrass can't deal with it. And then the seagrass can't deal with the nutrient load anyways. And you're like, oh, okay, the seagrass is dying. That's sad, I guess. And you're like, no, bro, that's worse than sad.
It's
Once
yeah,
the
it's
grass
called
dies,
life.
yeah, exactly. And like it releases tons of carbon. Seagrass and mangroves are huge carbon sinks, right? So when you use an acre of seagrass, it's like you're running a lot of cars at once for a really long time.
I
Wow.
basically tell people it becomes a desert underwater.
Right. Right. And then that underwater desert, when any kind of storm kicks up, bueno, what happens? The silt
Murky, the mud.
murky, and all of a sudden this beautiful blue azure bay that we have is going to turn into a muddy toilet bowl color. And are you going to be able to sell that $3 million apartment?
There you go.
And when it looks over a bay that, like, you know, is more cocky than green? No.
Right.
So it is absolutely tied together.
Yeah.
Absolutely
The
together.
environment is the economy again.
Yeah.
So, Oscar, do you have any questions?
Well, I'm curious about something regarding the Bay specifically, and that example that you gave, that are you going to be able to sell real estate if the Bay looks bad? Now, we have issues in Miami Beach specifically, where we bring sand from other places so that our beaches still look like people expect. So I would imagine, because there is a cynical side to me, that the real estate community will figure out a way of making the Bay look okay while it's not okay. That is there a way, is there a community, whether it's the city of Miami Beach, the county as a whole, that is leading a movement to address the issues, because they know that it does affect real estate? I mean, I think generally people have to figure out how it affects them, right? So if you're George Perez at Related, you can tell him, well, the Bay is going to look awful. And then he might say, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to pay for a bunch of coloring to make the Bay look better, right? So
like the people in Fisher Island perfume their area so they don't have to smell the.
I'm telling you, this is coming. So
I mean,
is there
I
a
wouldn't put it
pushback?
past folks. I wouldn't put it past folks.
Right.
And I think Oscar, the point that you're making is that it is much more likely for the business community here to maybe try and get a stopgap measure in than to try and
Exactly. That's what I'm talking
systemic
about.
issue.
Yes.
But the fact is, and this is what I love about climate change, is like, okay, fine, you can throw color into the Bay if you think that's gonna, you know, fix it, and if Wasti, if Lee Hefty over at Durham lets you do it.
Right.
But you're still not going to be able to flush a toilet in West Kendall if it's connected to a septic tank in like 20 years. So the incentive to, and the reason why you won't be able to flush that toilet is because the sea level will have risen, and that'll have risen the water table, and now there's going to be super heavy rains, and then you go to flush your toilet, and what happens? You look outside to your backyard, and your dog is covered in, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have that issue regardless of whether or not you fix the Bay. Mm-hmm. So if you go after the septic tanks aggressively now, right? If we decide to bond out the money that it takes to hook up the sewer connections, if we get aggressive with the enforcement, because there are laws on the books right now that mandate that the city can put, not the city, the county can put a lien on your property and force you to hook up to sewer if you're close to a main, if it's a septic tank. It's just everybody gets a variance, right?
Sure.
And the research project that we're working on right now, an investigative project. But so that's there, and if you make that shift, not only do you significantly reduce the total nutrient load in the Bay and help save some seagrass and make Miami, you know, stay pretty longer, right? Mm-hmm. But also you make sure that it's possible to keep pooping in West Kendall, right? And listen, I love talking about this stuff, but I really hope that, like, one of the things that people take away is that, like, if they live down in some place where they think the water is far away, right? Well, okay, great, but is your house going to sell when you can't flush the toilet? No, that's going to be $60,000 to fix, and probably, you know, maybe 5 or 6 years worth of you putting money into equity in that place. So, you know, se están jugando with a big issue.
Right. And I'm curious about something else. The city of Miami, because of issues related to the budget, is now going to eliminate, and I don't remember the exact title. I don't know if
Chief Resilience Officer
yes,
and Deputy
yes,
Chief Resilience Officer.
Right. So they're going to eliminate that, which is
just like
crazy.
like So Miami, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Our show is Miami View, and we like to talk about Miami things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is typical Miami. It's like, are you kidding? We're our ground zero for sea level rise,
Right.
among many things during a pandemic.
Yeah.
That a chief resilience officer is supposed to be handling all these emergencies and shocks and stressors, and you just eliminate the position and let the public works director handle things.
Yeah.
On top of all the stuff that director has to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It makes no sense. And I go back to my obsession with having a woman on that commission, because I wonder if there was a woman on the commission, would this be happening?
Right. Guys,
that's my little.
No. I agree. I think my camera died.
Yeah, I see. You're frozen, but we can still hear you.
You can still hear me. Okay, great. All right, so I'll just be like really intently looking at you folks for the rest of the
day. You're practicing statue.
That's right. Okay, so I'll tell you what. When I heard that, I do what I do because I have a problem with public records, right? Like I am a public records addict. Right? And even though I'm on furlough this week from the Sun Sentinel, I put in a 119 request for the statute. 119 is the Sunshine Law for all of the emails about this issue in the month of June between Art, Noriega, and all of the other city managers, and referencing resilience, chief resilience officer, Jane, because Jane left, or Jane is leaving. She hasn't left yet. Jane is, of course, the city manager's resilience officer. So here's what I am going to tell you. I am going to get to the bottom of this, and I am going to get those emails, and I'm going to figure out what was being said by whom, when, and we're gonna flesh out the record of this decision to see if there is really a legitimate reason for them making this decision. It's entirely possible that they have a legitimate reason, and then we're going to disagree with it. But they haven't stated their legitimate reason yet, right? When the Herald reached out to them, they didn't give them any comment, right? Suarez said, "Oh, call Art," right? Okay, and I know Jenny Sledovich put out a story in WLRN about this yesterday. I haven't seen what kind of response the City of Miami's comms put out, but they're going to need to articulate a really good reason for doing this, and more than just, oh, we have to cut costs. Because at the end of the day, you can cut costs all you want, but if you don't have systemic thinking within your city in terms of responding for sea level rise and shocks and stresses that the new world brings you, you're just not going to be successful here. This is not something that we can pump our way out of. This is not something that we can put seawalls or even blue-green infrastructure our way out of. We have to think systemically about how these issues affect our city, and that was the function of the Chief Resilience Officer.
But it goes beyond just sea level rise. I mean, the Chief Resilience Officer was dealing with income inequity in our community,
housing issues,
shocks like this, like Zika and pandemics, things like that. And so who's gonna do that?
Yeah,
who's gonna be that person that kind of puts all those pieces together? It can't be one department.
No, and the real question is they had somebody there who was forcing them to think systemic, right? Because they're a complex system, and tug on one end and something happens at the other, right?
Yep.
It's a big knot. And if that person is gone, are they making a pledge that they're still going to be doing this kind of thing?
Right.
Are they doing the kind of planning and thinking necessary to make sure that it's not just public works that are being resilient, but it's also all other kinds of service delivery? And if we're not seeing that, and if that's not within the reasoning, and if the records that I'm going to pull from them don't show that, then I think folks have a very serious leg to stand on to say, hey, Art, hey, Mayor, hey, Commission, which needs to have a woman on it, by the way. That's not the journalist, that's the opinion saying it. That needs to be addressed, but we're at the point with this question right now where, I want to see what the city says, and then I want to see what the city's records show. And I want to see if there's a difference between the two. But at this is the kind of thing where folks are very, very concerned, and I can understand why.
Well, thank God for the freedom of the press that you're able to, access all that information for, for the rest of us, right?
Right.
But, back to your book, because
Yeah.
that's really why we're here.
And what's the name of the book, and where can they get it?
Okay,
So the book is
right here. I have it right here.
yes.
Camera. Wait.
Yeah,
There
it is.
you go.
Okay, good.
Yes. It's a very pretty book.
I love that it's so Miami Vice looking.
It is, man. It's very nice.
The cover designer did a great job.
For those of us who grew up in the 80s here, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And you can get it at Books and Books, because we're trying to support our local
Right.
retail stores. There you are.
There I am.
And are you having a reading at, I guess, I don't know how that would work, but a virtual reading?
A virtual reading at Books and Books on Thursday, and then I've got another one that I can shout out to folks, and I'll tell you right now. It's with Sarasota Books on
very cool.
Monday at 6 p.m.
Very cool.
We'll be chatting with Sarasota Books then. And if you missed the one at Books and Books, feel free to drop by and hang out with us virtually at Sarasota Books, because even if they're on the other coast of Florida, now everybody's just in their living room.
Well, water surrounds us,
Exactly.
It certainly does. They have water issues and challenges with sea level rise as well. So this is, any coastal community is threatened, as well as inland communities, because Doral, is a sink.
So. Right, exactly. Yeah, Sweetwater doesn't really drain, and it's kind of far away from the ocean.
It's a big bathtub.
So they can get the information on the Sarasota Zoom. It's a Zoom call on your website?
Sarasota Books is having a digital reading. I'm going to put up on my website. I'll be sharing it on my
go ahead, and we'll post it on our Miami View Facebook page. We'll post
awesome. Right. I'll send it to you folks as well. And also, and you can purchase the book anywhere books are sold. If you're only local, Books and Books seems to be a fine institution.
Right. So describing the book,
yes,
and we've all read many books. How would you describe the book as a narrative? Is it a thriller where you sort of know the end? The detective has already made his decision that we're in big trouble. I mean, is it a thriller? Would you say that it's a sincere attempt to try and tell the story in silhouettes or in segments so that people can find it interesting?
Yes. So every chapter is a discrete chunk and deals with a sort of singular issue, right? Like there's a housing chapter, there's a resilience chapter, there's an Everglades chapter where I go python hunting with a hangover, which is not advisable. Like life pro tip: do not try that. But what ties it together is sort of like a memoir level sort of meditation on what it means to be living in Miami right now, and also on what it means to be living in a city that may not make it, right? The through line of the book is that there is a way to adapt the city, right? Like the golden path. And if everything gets done right and everybody gets their act together and we adapt what we need to adapt here, and we mitigate our carbon emissions, not just here, but statewide and nationally, and federal money comes in and the rest of the world gets its act together, then Miami could very well deal with 2 to 3, maybe 4 feet of sea level rise. We could survive that.
Okay.
Right?
Hope. There is hope. And I think
there's hope.
And the book in a very interesting, futuristic, hopeful way.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great.
I didn't want to leave folks on a down note.
Without giving away too much. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Those of us that advocate for the business community often.
Yeah. But at the same time, it is a narrow path that is getting narrower with every bit of carbon we extrude into the atmosphere.
There is no question that there's a call to action on many fronts here,
right.
Particularly Southeast Florida. And Mario, just on a personal note, I think you'll be very pleased with the recommendations coming out of the Biscayne Bay Task Force.
Oh, well, I'll have to check.
Our report.
Yes.
Coming to a government near you.
Yeah. Yeah.
A government near you.
I need to connect you with a guy named Aaron Stuber, Irela.
Right.
And we'll talk later about him, but he's doing some research into the history of septic tanks here that I think you'll find
Okay.
fascinating.
Cool. Very good. Very
That's
good.
great.
And I think we have a few minutes left, so we're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much, Mario Ariza, Disposable City, available at Books and Books or anywhere books are sold. It's a great account of, a Miami local, peering out of the window of what's coming, and what we can do about it.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always think is a motivator is hope, right? Your book has a lot of hope in it, and it's also describing how there are opportunities here for all types of people to not only participate but also to incorporate it in a positive way into what they do, whatever their profession is, whatever their business is, and that to me is the most important aspect, because people get scared if it's like, radical ideas, too much change in too short a time period, and then they think, oh, I'm going to get taxed into oblivion, all these ideas, which are a lot of stereotypes that actually don't bear out when you look at the facts. So if you leave the viewer with something, what would that be in terms of helping them understand that this is going to be useful to them and that they can come out of it in a positive way?
Yeah. Well, I would just tell folks that, listen, I wrote this book for them, right? I made this a sort of love letter to the people in my city, and guide to getting them through, and getting them to a future, because it's an open question whether the city has one. So this book is designed to take anybody who picks it up from 0 to 100 on the climate science, but also on what's going to happen to their city because of the changing climate, as fast as possible and as in as entertaining a fashion as I could, come up with. And sometimes I can. Great. So it may.
I think you froze again, Mario, but that beautiful ending to our show.
That's right.
Thank you so much for being with us. I have been enjoying the show next, but we're going to talk about immigration.
Cool. Well, thank you, folks. I really appreciate it, and thanks for also through my technical difficulties.
It's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
All right.